I always love a good barbecue.
You wanted monsters? You got monsters.
We got to see our monsters work together in this episode as we explore G.I. Robot's backstory that informed us on its history with killing Nazis and their enjoyment in doing so, but also its longing to be reunited with its old friends of Easy Company. But by the end of this episode, this may be our last time seeing the killer robot. So let's have some fun and recap and talk some DC Easter eggs and break down and discuss episode 3 of Creature Commandos, spoilers ahead. We open this episode with seeing the team arriving to Victor's castle as Flag lays out the plan of attack, which sends G.I. Robot back to a time of one of his first missions during World War II. Here in the flashback, we're introduced to the team Easy Company led by Sergeant Rock. As they come attack under the Nazis, G.I. registers the surrounding enemies and uses an Iron Giant move by growing in height and violently mows down the enemies and takes them all out. As they celebrate their victory, G.I. is officially welcomed into the team as he smiles and fulfills his programming duties as they celebrate at the bar with the rest of the surviving team members, which include Bulldozer, Short Round, Wild Man, Canary, Four Eyes, Little Short Shot, and Bogman. Now, for those like myself who aren't too familiar with Easy Company, this unit is basically a collection of skilled individuals who managed to participate in every major action in the European War in the DC Comics. Now, Sergeant Rock leads this team as he did in the comics, and it's been rumored and almost confirmed at this point that one of my favorite directors, Luca Guadagnino, will direct a Sergeant Rock live-action film starring Daniel Craig. Now, again, very similar to Easy Company, I'm not too familiar with Sergeant Rock and their origins and their overall story, but I do know he's worked in various groups from the Suicide Squad, Creature Commandos, and of course Easy Company, who first appeared in the comics in Our Army at War in April of 1959. Now, actor Maurice Sterling voiced Sergeant Rock in this episode and has a history of voicing other DC characters like Elliot Hush and Batman Hush. A co-CEO and creator of the show, James Gunn, has stated if possible that voice actors will return and portray their live-action versions and vice versa, and I do believe that he also said that in some cases that won't always be the case, and this could be an example of that with Sergeant Rock being played by Daniel Craig if that ends up coming to fruition with the live action film. Now, this could be one of those scenarios where they casted Sterling before talks with Luca Guadagnino and Daniel Craig possibly being attached even happen. So I am very curious to see if this brief introduction was only the beginning of what we might see in a Sergeant Rock live action film. Will we see the Easy Company in that film? Will it take place in the DCU, or will it be an Elseworld project? Let me know what you all think about the introduction of Sergeant Rock and the Easy Company and the live action film. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Now back to present day, they find the bride tied up and she tells them that Cersei and the Sons of Themyscira have left as G.I. Robot rushes to check on Nina upstairs. He finds her alive in a tub of water that she needs because of her destroyed tank cannon last week's episode, as it's clear that this friendship has quickly grown between Nina and G.I., which makes what happens to G.I. later more interesting as G.I. helps carry her around in her tub. Now Flag realizes that this was all a part of Cersei's plan to distract them, leaving her with the opportunity to attack the defenseless princess back at the castle as they rush back. But like I said in my last breakdown, I'm a fan of the bride and Nina. Like, they're two of my favorite characters so far, at least 3 episodes in, and I'm pretty confident that this is more of a plot convenience more than anything, but I am curious to know, why did Cersei leave them alive in the first place? I know she mentioned in episode 2 that she was going to send the leaders a message, but she never did that to the bride last week's episode. So again, very curious on why Cersei didn't kill them. Again, I'm happy they're alive, but I would have think that she would have eliminated them just to make things easier for herself. Now we flash back to the 60s where G.I. has been 20 years removed from the war as he's being interviewed on television. Now it's clear that G.I. is not meant for public speaking appearances as G.I. scans the audiences for Nazis and makes the host uncomfortable by its comments. Now observing from afar is someone who's taken interest in studying G.I. and sees that G.I. has a bit of self-awareness, and this person is no other than Dr. Will Magnus. Now in the DC Comics, Magnus is the creator of the Metal Man and one of the world's leading authorities in robotic engineering. Now in the comics, he's been a part of groups such as the Science Squad, but also Doom Patrol, which is one of my favorite groups in the DC universe. Now, like Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, I am very curious to know if we're going to get more of Magnus and seeing the formation of the Metal Man moving forward within the universe, because rumor has it that Tudyk, who voiced the character of Magnus in this episode, will reprise his role as the character in James Gunn's Superman. Now Magnus has GI in his lab and he's seeing what kind of programming he has in his systems, and he only realizes that he has one, which is killing Nazis, which leads Will to asking GI its true desires as he answers by saying,
"Someday I'd like to be reunited and see my boys."
Your boys?
The boys of Easy Company, sir. And kill Nazis with them.
Now Magnus hopes that by studying GI that he'll be able to create the next wave of automatons, aka most likely referring to the Metal Men. Now back to present day, we see the sons of Themyscira arrive and they're attacking the castle, and they briefly capture the princess before she manages to escape into her room. I gotta point this out before moving on. I'm a big James Gunn fan, but one of the things I'm not particularly a big fan of is how he depicts like secondary characters in the sense of like the groups, right? I think of the Ravengers from the Guardians of the Galaxies, or in this case, the sons of Themyscira or the princess's bodyguards. They're obviously being used as like cannon fodder, which is fine, but I do wish that some of these characters in these groups were taken more seriously and actually pose an actual threat to the situation, besides being used in like the butt of the joke. Now meanwhile outside, the Commandos arrive in style as Dr. Phosphorus makes a shish kebab out of a man's insides as the others take out the sons of Themyscira, and Nina gets a new head fish tank. And while the GI robot is watching this takes us back into another one of his flashbacks. Now in this flashback we see that GI is now an antique in a shop and puts him somewhere in the early 2000s and ultimately gets purchased by a man named Sam, who's voiced by Michael Rooker. Now here it appears that Sam was a good guy with interest in collecting war items, as we watch GI gets acquainted with Sam and essentially has a new family with Sam and his cats. Now as time goes on, they've grown closer and Sam takes GI to meet some of his friends who want a better country, and unfortunately we see who Sam really is as his friends happen to be Nazis. Now from here we get a pretty cool match cut that takes us from the present day to GI's past, as GI is being told in present day by Flag that the enemies are Nazis, which clearly makes him happy. Now this takes us back to the flashback where GI kills Sam and the rest of his buddies, as we flash forward to seeing the upgrades that Magnus gave GI as he's able to detach his body and float in the air as he fires away with his new weaponry, taking the sons of Themyscira out with ease. Again, cutting from the past and the present, we see GI at his happiest when he's killing Nazis, as we see him celebrating with the Easy Company and getting arrested after killing Sam and the 32 others, as they label GI as a man, which is wild to me. Now the verdict leads him into Belle Reve as we watch time passing by, which would I assume to be over 20 years, which leads him and Flag meeting each other in episode 1. Now just to backtrack a bit, I did find it interesting that they had like a whole court trial for GI. Now I would assume they did that because he's part of the US government and he's like property of the US government, but again, I think from like saving resources, why would you hold a trial and put a robot in prison? Why not just simply shut it down? But I think the reason the show showed us him going to the court trial and being put in Belle Reve and what I would imagine was going to happen for the rest of the backstories of the team, they're not necessarily monsters, but they're ultimately just misunderstood. Now we know that GI didn't just randomly kill those men, it was built into his programming, not some type of act of a malfunction. The government created exactly what they got, and that was a killing machine. Now we did get some cool Easter eggs during GI's montage as he was going to his cell. I couldn't get a clear shot of all the monsters, but we get a shot of the animal vegetable mineral man, who's one of Doom Patrol's villains, as well as Crimson Centipede, who is another foe of Wonder Woman. Now cut back to GI laughing in the sky, and we see him enjoying this moment of happiness, but unfortunately it's cut short because Cersei arrives and blows him up, destroying GI as she heads inside the castle. Now back inside the castle, we see the princess fending for her own as she shoots and kills 2 of the sons of Themyscira, but she ends up getting hit by one of Cersei's blasts. Now as the princess is begging for her life, and just as Cersei's about to kill her, in comes Weasel, who attacks Cersei like a wild animal that it is, as it bites at her neck and face and tosses her outside. Now here outside, we see the Weasel going berserk on Cersei, scratching and clawing at her back as Dr. Phosphorus barbecues her face, as Flag is watching in shock as the bride tells him,
You wanted monsters, you got monsters.
Nina finds GI's head outside and he's malfunctioning as he's saying his last words, which leads her to crying and losing her new friend as Cersei is beaten and battered and tells the Commandos,
You don't understand what you've done! You've doomed the world!
Now, speaking to those last words by Cersei before getting caught by the Commandos, her not taking over the country and killing the princess will lead to the end of the world. So very interesting stuff there. And going back to the whole Waller of it all, she had mentioned that the resources of this country was oil, but again, knowing Waller, there's probably some more details that she left out. Is the princess secretly a metahuman and the resources are unearthly? Is the princess's carefree attitude and wanting to sleep with Rick Flag a facade covering up some more sinister intentions? This even has me thinking about her army and her security and their suits being so teched up. Again, it makes me wonder if there's any importance to that. Even thinking about the princess talking about her mother, who's the current queen, I wonder if there's any more stories to explore there. Now, of course, I've seen the rumors after episode 1 and 2 online about how people think that the princess may be Clayface in disguise. Honestly, I can see that being like a possibility, knowing James Gunn's sense of humor, and if this is to be true, I can't wait to see Rick Flagstein's reaction knowing that he slept with Clayface. Speaking of Clayface, this brings me to a question: how long can he or she, because there is a female version of the character, how long can Clayface impersonate someone? Now, the only answer I was able to find online was the Matt Hagen version of Clayface, who was able to temporarily shapeshift but needed to recharge his powers after 48 hours. So I don't know if I really buy into the Clayface being the princess of it all, but hey, again, that would be a pretty crazy reveal. Now, speaking to my thoughts about the episode, I think from a character backstory perspective, G.I. Robot to me is the least interesting of the group, so inherently this makes this the most least interesting or appealing episode thus far, because its story isn't all that complicated or complex. Don't get me wrong, it's messed up that G.I. was created to only do one thing, and once it served its purpose, it was pretty much thrown away by the government, but I was kind of surprised that they didn't explore more between G.I. and Magnus. Like, did he upgrade his mainframe to maybe have more human emotions and have more emotions in general, which makes me think that there's probably more to explore with the operational functioning of the upgrades that Will gave him. So maybe there is something to be looked at. And also, as far as G.I. being destroyed and being killed and we're not going to get more of the character, I don't think that's going to be the case. Like, I think Nina, who's a genius, will probably bring back G.I., give him more updates, give him more emotions, and not just be only serving the purpose of a killing machine. So overall, this was my least favorite of the 3 episodes so far, and I thought that the episode overall was just okay. It was some fun action and also some cool Easter eggs for the greater DCU. But now looking at 3 episodes in, I do personally feel like this probably would have been better to release it all at once, or maybe 2 episodes at a time, because these 22 minute episodes from like a week to week perspective doesn't seem like the ideal format based on these 3 episodes so far. But apparently episode 4 is the best of the season, and we're going to explore this nightmare sequence from what we saw in the weeks ahead trailer. So hopefully next week gives us like a more fuller, more exciting, more interesting episode than episode 3 in my opinion. So before we wrapped up, hopefully they're not blocked, but I will be releasing short reactions to my channel on some of the best moments from this episode, so keep an eye out for that content. So what did you think of this episode? Did you all enjoy G.I. Robot's backstory? Is he a monster and a killer, or just misunderstood because of his programming? Let me know your thoughts on the introduction of characters like Sergeant Rock and Will Magnus, and do you hope to see them again in the future? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So thank you all for watching this breakdown. I'll be back next week talking about hopefully a great episode of Creature Commandos in episode 4. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button and also consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. You all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.